Good evening, everyone. People on Zoom. Thanks for spending this beautiful evening in the late summer, end of summer. Thanks for spending it with us. Tonight I'm going to talk about dependent origination. My name is Jiryu. One of the things that I like to do in my talks is to go back to some of the earliest philosophical building blocks of Buddhism and then show how those building blocks have been incorporated into our modern practice and how that's evolved over time and what we use those building blocks for now. So dependent origination has a number of different names. Dependent origination is sometimes called the 12-fold chain of causation, or just causation, or just causality. And what this is one of the early Buddhist ways of explaining how a human experience arises and causes suffering in the way that we experience that. Sometimes you'll see this as a diagram, like with a rooster and a pig and a snake in the center, and then these links around it. So the rooster, the pig, and the snake are supposed to represent ignorance, greed, and anger. I don't know, I think that's pretty anthropomorphic, but that's what it is. So I'm just going to present each of the links briefly, and then I'm going to talk about how this was used in the Pali Canon, which is the original teachings of the Buddha. Which have any of you heard of that? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this appears in the Samyutta Nikaya, which is one of the books of the Theravadan tradition. It's supposedly the original teachings of the Buddha, although how do we know that? Because originally they were oral teachings, so they were memorized and passed down through an oral tradition for hundreds of years before they were ever written down. But this is the way it comes to us. And so this is usually presented in this order, but it can appear in other orders, and we'll talk about that in a minute when I get to this section about the Samyutta Nikaya. But the first link is ignorance. That's how this whole thing starts. And what this means, just briefly, is ignorance of the way things really are. Right? So we just either through not knowing or through willfully not acknowledging it, the way things really are. Impermanent, interdependent, and without a permanent, pre-existing essence or self. So that's ignorance. The next link is volitional formations. And what this means is, and all of these are, they cause each other. So we go from ignorance causes the next one, which causes the next one, which causes the next one. They go around like that. You could even make an argument that you could start anywhere and it causes all of them. But the next one is volitional formations, which means subjectivity. And that just means awareness of a this and a that. Two things. The next link is consciousness. And what we mean by that is self-consciousness. A consciousness of a mind and things outside of our minds. The next link after consciousness is a link called name and form. So this is a further delineation of what things are, the things that are outside of us. So these are like language descriptions. Car, dog, chair, cushion, bowl. So just defining things. The fifth link is the 6 sense bases. So that these are the sense organs that we have. So it's our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, our body, which is just a stand-in for what we can feel. And then our mind. In Buddhism, our mind is considered a sense. After this six sense basis comes contact. So that means what the six senses do. So seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. And most importantly, thinking things, right? Those say things that are outside. And after sense contact comes feeling. And these are judgments that we make about the things that we've inferred. So, is a piece of paper good? Is it bad? Or is it indifferent? And this is about anything that our senses contacts. So after contact comes, or after feeling comes craving. That's pretty simple, right? It's, I want good things. I don't want bad things. And indifferent things I don't care about. So these are going down the list here. The ninth link is called clinging. That means holding on to the things that we want that are good things. Of course, the problem there is that all things are impermanent, so it causes problems. After clinging comes a link called becoming, and they also call it existence. So these are our responses to the sense impressions that we get. In other words, this leads to a sense of a self. So it's not just I want a good thing, it's I want a good thing. I don't want a bad thing. I don't care about an indifferent thing. And the next one is a link called birth. And this is where our belief that there's a self comes into play. A self that is distinct and apart from things. So there's a me and there are things. And the last one is called old age and death. So once we have this idea that I have a self, we have this idea that this self is impermanent and is going to die. So this is a way of describing what in the Pali Canon is called dukkha. This sometimes gets translated as suffering, which I don't like that translation. Because in the original language, it has more to do with something being off balance. Like your sense that your life is kind of somehow weird somehow. Like, why am I suffering all the time? What's going on here? This doesn't seem right. So in the original Pali, that word dukkha has this sense of like a wagon wheel that's off center. It's like something's wrong here. So once we have that whole thing, then we've lost track of the fact that everything's just this. And it leads us right back to ignorance again. We've forgotten that things are impermanent, that they're independent, and they're without a pre-existing permanent essence or self. These are conditions. Each one is a condition for the other, and each one is a condition for all of them. This is cyclical in nature. This cycle might last a long time, might be an instant. What we call suffering, what we call dissatisfaction, arises from this conditioned process. One thing that we do causing another thing, causing another thing, and another thing, and another thing. So now I'm going to read a section from the Samyutta Nikaya called, this is the Connected Discourses on Causation. It's verse 12, chapter 12, verse 20, and it's called Conditions. So this is how this was discussed by the Buddha in his time. And he says, "Monks, I will teach you dependent origination and dependently arisen phenomena. Listen and attend closely. I will speak. What, monks, is dependent origination? With birth as condition, aging and death comes to be. Whether there is an arising of Buddhas or no arising of Buddhas, awakened people, that element still persists. The stableness of the Dhamma, the fixed course of the Dhamma, specific conditionality. A Buddha awakens to this and breaks through to it. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it, and he says, "See, with birth as condition, monks, aging and death. With existence as condition, birth. With clinging as a condition, existence. With craving as a condition, clinging. With feeling as a condition, craving. With contact as a condition, feeling. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact. With name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases. With consciousness as condition, name and form. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness. With ignorance as condition, volitional formations. Whether there is an arising of Buddhas or no arising of Buddhas, that element still persists. The stableness of the Dhamma, the fixed course of the Dhamma, the specific conditionality. A Buddha awakens to this and breaks through to it. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it, and says, "See, with ignorance as condition, volitional formations." Thus, monks, the factuality in this, the inerrancy, the invariability, the specific conditionality, this is called dependent origination. And what, monks, are the dependently arisen phenomena? Aging and death, monks, is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away, and cessation. Birth is impermanent, existence is impermanent, clinging is impermanent, craving is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, contact is impermanent. The 6 sense bases are impermanent. Name and form is impermanent. Consciousness is impermanent. Volitional formations are impermanent. Ignorance is impermanent. Conditioned, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away, and cessation. These, monks, are called the independently arisen phenomena. When, monks, a noble disciple is clearly seen with correct wisdom as it really is, this dependent origination and these dependently arisen phenomena, it is impossible that he will run back into the past thinking, did I exist in the past? Did I not exist in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what did I become in the past? Or that he'll run forward into the future thinking, will I exist in the future? Will I not exist in the future? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? Having been what will I become in the future? Or that he will now be inwardly confused about the present, saying, do I exist? Do I not exist? What am I? How am I? This being, where does it come from and where will it go? For what reason is this impossible? Because monk, the noble disciple, is clearly seen with correct wisdom as it really is, this dependent origination and these dependently arisen phenomena. It's 2 takeaway points from this. He says, whether or awakened or not, if there are Buddhas or there aren't Buddhas, if you're a Buddha, if you're not a Buddha, every being is subject to causality. The second point, which I think is really interesting, especially in relationship to meditation practice, is this idea of meditation thought loops, right? Did I exist in the past? Has anybody ever done this when they're sitting? I'm like, what did I do last week? I'm saying, and you're planning in the future, right? We all do this. That's exactly what he's saying. So if we can see how things really are, we just go. Now in Zen, what we'd like to do is to point directly at the emptiness of this entire process, right? That's what we're doing in Mahayana. This is the branch of Buddhism that Zen is a part of. The penultimate idea is this idea of prajnaparamita, emptiness. There's no things, there's just this. Beyond. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisattva. You know that? It's from the Heart Sutra. Be beyond, beyond, beyond. The tools that we use in Zen for approaching this are number 1, meditation. Number 2, koans. You've got silence and paradox. They're just ways of dismantling conceptual thinking. Stop analyzing this process. See it as empty. Dogen Zenji was the founder of Zen Buddhism in 11th century Japan. A fascicle where he says, and I don't know if you've gone to Into, you probably know about this. To study the ways, to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. Forget the self. Become actualized by myriad things. When we can sit and meditate or use these other tools, we can have moments where you let go of self. You can see that there's no independent Jiryu that's experiencing the links in his chain. There's no self There's no self there. It's a small awakening. Small awakening. Sometimes, if you work at it for a long time, or maybe if you don't, maybe it just happens to you. Well, know what actually is. Know what actually is. Just this. And when you do that, it kicks out ignorance. And the cycle stops. It may come back. But for that time when you know, the cycle's ended. It's a big awakening. So you've got ignorance, and you've got awakening. So two poles. Ignorance, misperceiving reality, whether we're naive about it, or we just want to bury our head in the sand and not know about it. But it still means mistaking the self as separate. It's a mistake. What we want to do is wake up right now. Not in the future. Not in the past. Now. I want to avoid this. What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? Having been what will I be in the future? Be this now. So now I'm going to read a more classic Zen story about these issues. This is a koan called Bai Zhang's Fox. Anybody else have you heard this? Right. So a couple of things I need to explain so you don't get really confused because koans are really bizarre. Is in Asian literature, Asian mythology really, a fox is considered to be kind of a supernatural, kind of iffy being, kind of like almost evil. And the other thing is that you have these things called hell realms, right? And one of the hell realms is the animal realm. And this is a bad place to be because you have very little chance of awakening when you're an animal. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there's going to be this thing at the very end which is like, what is this stuff about beards and slapping and stuff? There's a little part in here where he says, he's laughing at me, he goes, you have a weird beard. It's like, what I'm referring to is the first ancestor of Zen in China. So a guy named Bodhidharma. He came from India and supposedly had like weird eyebrows and a real weird bushy beard. So what he's doing is he's complimenting him, saying like, you're like Bodhidharma, that he's awakened. Anyway, here's the talk. Or rather, here's the koan. Every time Bai Zhang gave a Dharma talk, a certain old man would come to listen. He usually left after the talk, but one day he remained. Bai Zhang asked, "Who are you?" The man said, "I'm not actually a human being. I lived and taught on this mountain at the time of Kashyapa Buddha." It's a long time ago. One day a student asked me, "Does a person who practices with great devotion still fall into cause and effect?" I said to him, "No, such a person doesn't." Because I said this, I was reborn as a wild fox for 500 lifetimes. Reverend Master, please say a turning word for me and free me from this wild fox body. Then he asked Bai Zhang, Does a person who practices with great devotion still fall into cause and effect? Bai Zhang said, don't ignore cause and effect. Immediately, the man had a great awakening. Bowing, he said, I am now liberated from the body of a wild fox. I will stay in the mountain behind the monastery. Master, could you perform the usual services for a deceased monk for me? Bai Zhang asked the head of the monks' hall to inform the assembly that funeral services for a monk would be held after the midday meal. The monks asked one another, what's going on? Everyone's okay. There's no one sick here. After their meal, Bai Zhang led them to a large rock behind the monastery and showed them a dead fox at the rock's base. Following the customary procedure, they cremated the body. That evening, during his lecture in the Dharma hall, Bai Zhang talked about what had happened that day. Huang Bo asked him, a teacher of old gave a wrong answer and became a wild fox for 500 lifetimes. What if he hadn't given a wrong answer? Bai Zhang said, come closer and I'll tell you. Huang Bo went closer and slapped Bai Zhang. Laughing, Bai Zhang clapped his hands and said, I thought it was only barbarians who had unusual beards, but you too have an unusual beard. Whether there's an arising of Buddhas or no arising of Buddhas, that element still persists. The fixed course of specific conditionality. Whether awakened or not, every being is subject to causality. It's the realization of non-duality that undermines the entire causal chain. We can separate ourselves from this. It's all empty. Yeah. Our practice is a disruption of the change. When I teach meditation, one of the first things I like to tell people is Zazen, practicing meditation, is not about escaping. It's not about going away. It's not about escaping. It's about awareness. Awareness of this. Impermanent. Without self. Interdependent. Meditation and mindfulness practice interrupts the link between feeling and craving. Right? We're sitting, feeling things, just let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Just let it go. When the mind doesn't cling, you don't get hooked. You don't get bound in this cycle. And our practice interrupts the link between contact and self-identification. When you see that there's no fixed me, Everything that I think that I am is constantly changing, constantly moving. Didn't exist before me. It's impermanent. And you see that. It's only this experience, what we have right now. Freshly arriving. So what can we do with this, right? In your everyday practice, just see the chain. Just see it. I need to comment on it. Don't need to try and beat it to death. Tear it apart. Analyze it. You just see it. I'm being ignorant. I'm being ignorant. Clinging. Clinging to something that's impermanent. Oh, it hurts. I see it. There you go. A practice doesn't analyze the process. We move beyond it. This moment right now, every moment after it, offers us a chance to interrupt. Interrupt the cycle. Interrupt ignorance with clarity and awareness. So, we honor this idea of the 12 links, but we seek direct liberation. So just sit and be with it. If you see it coming up, yeah, I see that. Okay. And that's all I have to say tonight.